What is up, Generals? We are back with Ultimate General Civil War, and we're taking a look at the J&P Rebalance Mod, candidate release 1.26, and this is the camp screen before we head into Stones River. So let's go ahead and fire up our Confederate Let's Play. We've filled the army out before the battle, and I've done a little bit of cleanup as well behind the scenes, which is always a good time. Oh darn. We need to rename these corps appropriately. There. So the Reserve Corps is totally going to be empty. And for whatever reason, the aura that goes around your corps commander is smaller on the in the first corps than any other corps. So the area that MG Fiasco or Robert Lee or Albert Johnson puts out is going to be larger than the area that Darren Gordon puts out. Despite let's pretend that these generals were all equal rank, they would still put out smaller auras. So to that end, I recommend treating the first corps you start the game with as a holding corps basically as soon as possible. So the big changes for 1.26 from a playing perspective are going to surround in-game stuff that we'll capture in the Stones River battlefield, and then also your some of the camp screen things surrounding your supply wagon. Additionally, there are some changes vis-a-vis rewards for the Union campaign that we're obviously not going to really have a great deal of visibility to in this particular playthrough. Off camera, I have been playing a good deal of the Union campaign and really enjoying it. If for no other reason than because it's a major change of pace than what I'm doing as a Confederate. So let's talk about kind of changes to the camp screen. The standard brigade size is still 1,500. I had debated pushing to 1,600, and I have the manpower to do it in many cases, or the money and the manpower to do it, to buy the guns and everything to go with it. The issue is that I have so many 2-star units now that using rookies to build them up will lose them a perk. And I'd like to keep them as 2-star units. We've also had to expand all of the brigades to their full size. And the reason being therein is that, you know what, there's a couple of these units with reboards. Just the 2, I think, right? Yeah, we can afford better. And if you're going to spend 15, you may as well spend 18. And if you're going to spend 18, you may as well... No, 18's about right. All right.
Sir, yes, sir!
All right, so we're not bringing reboards to a major battle at the tail end of the campaign. Because that was like me trying to just get bodies on the field. So we have no-star units. I used to call them militia. Now I call them volunteers. 1-star gets you to infantry status. 2-star gets you to rifles or grenadier guards status, or whatever, grenadier status. And then the third will probably be guards, but I imagine I will not get a great deal of 3-star units. All right, so the battlefield plan is generally as follows. Lee and 2 Corps are going to attack left. Fiasco is going to anchor on the right, and Johnston will be the reserve for the forest. So as you can see, we're outnumbered a wee tiny bit below 2-1, which before I started adding all these units, it was exactly 2-1. So this is actually scaling in my favor. They still outgun us 2-1-ish, more or less. So that's not really a huge shift. I'm not that worried about it. But in the campaign screen, as a Confederate, you'll notice that the baseline Confederate stats have gone down. I have no points in training, so without any points in training, they are 18, 23, 28, 21, 21. Every perk in training will bump that number up by 2, as well as reducing the cost of your veterans. Now, I would imagine that if these numbers are the case, efficiency, morale, stamina, firearms, and melee, you don't see, so you wouldn't see morale and you wouldn't see command seeing a perk raise. So those just need to expand. Command is a function of leadership, and then morale is time on the battlefield. And then I guess indirectly as well, how many perk points and reputation you've utilized. So keep that in mind. The other thing that you'll notice is that I have 100,000 and 100,000 in first and second core because they're sort of grandfathered in past the changes for 1.26. But if I was to lower these to 0 and then put the money back into the supply wagons, they would only be this full, 60,000. So now how large you can fill your supply wagon is a function of these stats. We're going to go ahead and mouse down all of them and try and figure out what does what. But I'm sure somewhere Panda or Johnny have released a document that will cover these things. So politics will obviously do what it's always done, increase your number of gold and recruits. But now it also makes it cheaper to refill the supply wagon after every battle. It's another thing you have to do. You have to pay to refill your supply wagon. Economy will do what it's always done, give you a gun discount, or a discount cost to arm your troops. It will also give you a discount to resupply your wagon, which makes sense, right? Medicine, I think, does what it's always done. Yeah, so it does what it's always done. You get unit trickle back at max cap. It's 33% of casualties are returned back to your force at the end of the battle, which is great. And it reduces officer death rate, apparently by some trivial amount. Super, I guess. Training does what it's always done, cheaper veterans, and also better recruits in the first place. AO has gotten a lot of very interesting things added to it. So it is at its core, like it's always been, the number of corps you can have, the number of divisions, brigades, how big those brigades can be, blah, 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 blah. However, there is again another discount to make filling your supply wagon cheaper. Additionally, AO controls how large that supply wagon can be in the first place. Super kind of cool. Logistics does the same sort of general thing. It increases the multiplier of, whatever guns are going to be in your store in the battlefield. Also, it does both the things that politics and econ have been doing as well as AO. It makes the supply wagon bigger, and in addition, it also makes it cheaper to fill it back up. Recon, as far as I know, that's right. It hasn't been changed. It has been changed. So I forget where the exact breakpoints are for some of these things. But at every odd level, at I think 1, 3, and 5. So afterwards, it still requires 2 pips to get to the next level. You're given more information. So there's the usual, I think it's plus 50 per perk, I want to say. Spotting across the entire army. This is a stat that I think is frequently underutilized or undervalued among players. Spotting is way more important than I think people think it is. And then the other part that's pretty cool here is additional perk points in Recon start telling you when you have flanked an opposing unit, and you'll start getting notifications when you kill enemy officers. So you can know I've killed, I don't know, Brigadier General such and such of that brigade, or division commanders when they go down. Now, we as players frequently lack visibility into where exactly the breakdown is for a division, but knowing we've killed a division commander is enough for us to know in the background, it's quite likely that the efficiency of several units is lower than it could be before. So those are the big things that you're going to immediately notice, especially if you start a new campaign. Your supply wagon is going to be much harder to fill up. Now, as rough as that kind of sounds off the cuff, I think it's actually very cool. Because let's just take the Union campaign I'm playing off screen as an example. I can only fill it to, 15, 20,000, something like that. And you get, 60,000 or so to start your campaign off with, 70, somewhere in there. And this isn't legendary and major general. And normally what I do is I just fill that bitch up and don't think about it ever again. And here, because I can only put so much in, I kind of found myself sitting there with a lot of money and thinking, like, what am I going to do with this? And the Union campaign is really, really hard at the start. It's hard again towards the tail, but the middle's really kind of smooth sailing, I think. But the campaign is hard as hell, actually, in the start, because your army is poorly equipped, poorly led, and has absolutely no stats. So mitigating that somewhat with better guns goes a long way towards making some things of that a little easier. I personally spent them on artillery, but I could easily see an argument for spending them on rifles as well. And for the Confederate campaign, you'll experience much the same, but because this is a kind of a cool thing, because the Confederate campaign relies so heavily on its infantry in the early campaign, you'll feel that squeeze a bit less. Infantry is functionally free, as far as I'm concerned, to rearm. So you'll feel it less, even though it's there. Let me see. What do I want? I want to put you up to, let's say, 350. Yeah. Additionally, as a Confederate, you'll notice that the Whitworth is harder to come by, which, makes sense. It has continued to be this dominant force on the battlefield, so just be ready for that, I guess. Hoard them even more than you already do, I suppose. And that's pretty much it as far as I can tell for big changes, at least on the camp screen. Like I said, the general theory here, and what's the unit that I don't care about not deploying in 2 core? I want to bring in, let's say you. I'll swap you for, oh, that's right. I need to delete the 41st. Okay. What did they have? It must have been 61s. 41st. What state were they from? Whatever. They were from North Carolina. I mean, I'll be able to watch the playback and know that I'm wrong, but whatever. 41st. What did I do? I just did that wrong. Okay. They didn't have MGs. They had 61s.
Yes, sir.
So I have a bunch of these, and I want them to be vaguely combat useful. It doesn't matter. They're not going to get deployed. Well, will they show up later? I don't know. So, whatever. I'll give them this. 41st. I just said they were from North Carolina. Volunteers. Cool. So, they're going to be the unit that I'm not going to worry about bringing. And I don't really fully, truly understand how all this works, but essentially you just don't bring one unit and you get a bunch of stuff. So, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. Broadly speaking, however, like I said, Robert Lee is carrying the left flank. MG Fiasco is providing the fire base upon which the entire army rotates. And Johnston is going to be my reserve soldier, bringing in a lot of troops to help fill things in. All of my truly long-range heavy guns are stacked up here because this is the division that you get troops out of. And the reason I'm bringing Fiasco to do this role is that he has the accuracy, and experience progression path. For record, Robert Lee has the mobility, accuracy, and experience progression path, and Albert Johnston has the mobility, accuracy, and cover progression path. So I actually kind of like Johnston. I like this build quite a bit. I think this might be possibly my favorite in terms of it just kind of buffs everything about your army, and in a very roundabout way, this extra cover probably provides a solid amount of force protection for your army. I've watched Boots and Cats play with this general, and Boots and Cats he'll have guys on like fence lines with 100% cover because this plus 50% cover bonus seems to be additive, not multiplicative, which is wild pants. So having so many volunteers in this division plus cavalry is not as bad, or not division, corps is not as bad, because I expect Johnston will be able to keep them alive a little better than some of the others. So, 2 and 3, IN2 Corps are both kind of built to level you up quick. I have an experiment here. 7th Virginia Dragoons is a big-ass cavalry unit. I have an experiment with them. I worry about it jacking the scaling on cavalry, but we'll see. And Johnson is kind of designed to keep you alive once you get up there, which is why I have so many of my 2-star units in Johnston's corps as well. Anyway, that is pretty much it as far as the camp screen is concerned. The rest of the changes you're not going to see until we get into the battlefield itself. The big one that you should look out for is the group charging mechanic. And I don't really know the specifics of how exactly it functions behind the hood, but my perception is if Unit A sees Unit B charging, Unit A is more likely to go charge with them. Additionally, if you deploy skirmishers out in front of your unit, which you also can't do anyway, and Unit A is charging, Unit A is going to say, well, if I contact that too, it's probably a good thing. Let's go ahead and just press the charge on. And so they're a lot less likely to kind of randomly stop charging all of a sudden. So it's really forced me to reevaluate my opinion of smoothbore guns and consider artillery not only as a reach out and touch somebody kind of counter battery or glass cannon kind of perspective, but also now as well in a force protection role. So anywho, that is pretty much all the camp screen here, and we'll see you guys on the battlefield at Stones River. Until then, though, this is Fiasco saying I hope you guys have a great one, and I'll see you next time. Out.